There's a lot of focus on uncovering the best places to live in the world, but what about places to avoid? Well, a new survey of 12,500 expats has come out with 10 countries that people definitely don't like living in. So if you're currently trying to decide where to move abroad, then pay close attention to this video. I know I can tell you how surprised I was to find that 4 of my favorite countries were on this list. So let's dig into the results and see what people like and don't like about these 10 countries. Well, the first place on our list is actually the least worst place on this list, and it's a country that I really like, and I spent 6 months traveling around there last year, and that is the UK. Now, people do have some complaints generally about the UK, namely the weather and also the prices. The UK was a country that was hit particularly hard after the pandemic, with consumer prices going up a lot, especially grocery prices and housing prices. The UK also has a strong currency, and so that can make things expensive regardless of where you're coming from. I also found when I was staying there that I was quite surprised at the price of local transportation, taxis, and also the trains, which I heard, according to locals, that once the train system was privatized, the prices for tickets went up a lot. So I wasn't too surprised to see the UK on this list, because I know from personal experience how expensive it can be there and how difficult it can be to find housing. But what people from this survey said, their biggest complaint was actually job security, which really surprised me, because coming from the United States, I always thought that the UK had a strong job market, especially strong employee benefits like paid sick leave, paid holiday leave, and also paid maternity and paternity leave. But according to this survey, people said that their concern with moving to the UK was finding a good job and then actually keeping it. People also said that the income they earned from their jobs was not enough to cover the cost of living there. So I can definitely understand that, and I actually made an entire video about my cost of living in the UK, which I'll link to below this one. You can watch that later. But one expat said, everything in the UK is expensive. The income I get after taxes does not suffice. So if you are looking for a job abroad, then this would be something to consider if you're thinking of moving to the UK. But if you're a retiree or a digital nomad who doesn't have to worry about the job market, then maybe that wouldn't be such a big negative for you. 9th on our list is Ireland, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and assume that this is for 2 reasons very similar to the UK, the inclement weather and also the competitive housing market. But let's see what these expats had to say. So like the UK, it says here that Ireland ranked pretty average across every category, but where it really hit hard is with healthcare. In fact, last year, Ireland came in last when it came to healthcare due to difficulty of availability of care and also high costs. It ranked okay for local friendliness and making friends, which I would agree with, as I spent some time in Ireland a couple years ago and I made some videos talking to the locals there and also about the culture shock that I experienced there. But the big problem here is that it's expensive, and a lot of this expense comes from the housing market. So the cost of living for an expat or a digital nomad in Ireland, according to Nomad List, is between $4,000 and $6,000 per month, and a big portion of your paycheck is gonna go to housing, especially if you live in Dublin, because Ireland has done so much to attract multinational corporations in recent decades that it put a lot of upward pressure on those housing prices with very limited availability. So if you're not going for work, then you wanna try to find somewhere out in the countryside where you have a little bit more room, a little bit more selection, and you could probably get more bang for your buck. Most of the foreigners I met there said that they had a really hard time adjusting to the cold, rainy weather, especially if they were from sunnier places like Brazil or Spain. So that's something to keep in mind, but people really do like Ireland for the wide open spaces, the green countryside, and also it's a very safe, secure, and peaceful place. So pros and cons here. In 8th place on our list is a country that, in my experience, people either love it or they don't. They maybe feel a bit indifferent about it, and that is Malta. So I did spend a few months living there back in 2013, and I felt a little bit in between. It was a nice experience, but I didn't see myself living there long term. I found that even though English is an official language of Malta, that it was really hard to fit in with the local people without speaking Maltese. And I also found that the expat community was pretty hard to break into as well. There's a really big population of people from the UK living there, especially for work, and also a lot of retirees. But at that time, there weren't a lot of other events going on for foreigners. There wasn't a big international expat population, and there weren't many meetups and things to do. I'm somebody who really likes to do yoga and exercise and work out, and I found it hard to find a lot of classes and things like that. And also the food selection can be a bit limited there. If you're used to coming from mainland Europe, that has, in my opinion, some of the best grocery stores in the world, or from the US and Canada where you have a big selection, you're gonna find a bit less of it there in Malta. But those weren't really the complaints that people in this survey had necessarily. The biggest factor that Malta ranked the lowest on in this survey was environment and climate, which is interesting because Malta has that really nice Mediterranean climate, but then on the other hand, it doesn't have much nature to speak of because it is a limestone island. So I can kind of see where that comes in. People also rated the transportation system very low, and they just said it was okay on healthcare. So I would agree that the healthcare system is pretty good in Malta. You've got a lot of private and public options available. I didn't really notice anything bad about the transportation, but because it is an island, if you're outside of the urban areas like Sliema and St. Julian's, it's definitely a benefit to have a car because the distances can be pretty far between towns. What really surprised me here is that Malta ranked rock bottom when it comes to quality of life. They say that the work environment is okay and the people are pretty friendly and welcoming, but Malta ranks kind of in the middle when it comes to personal finance. It's definitely not the cheapest country that you can live in Europe, and especially housing prices have gotten a lot more expensive in recent years due to tourism, Airbnb, lots of short-term rentals. So kind of similar problems that we've seen in so many other countries around the world, especially Portugal and Mexico and everywhere. Number 7 on our list is definitely a country that you could be considering moving to, and it is Italy. So this one definitely shocked me to see, especially to find out that it ranked in the bottom 10 on this same survey last year. But my assumption here is that it probably has something to do with the slow bureaucracy there, because Italy is notorious for having a lot of red tape and a very frustrating process if you want to apply for the elective residency visa or any other type of long stay permit there. They did just launch a digital nomad visa, so we'll have to see how fast that is actually processed. But if you're thinking of moving to Italy, then that is something to keep in mind. And the respondents of this survey definitely did not hold back when it came to expressing their frustration with the Italian bureaucracy. Other categories that really pulled Italy down in the rankings are related to work, salary, and job security. So if you're going there to retire or to work remotely, you're okay, but if you're looking for a job and that's why you're changing countries, then perhaps look elsewhere. Otherwise, Italy ranks pretty much in the middle for factors like personal finance and quality of life. I thought it would rank a bit better for that because it can be an affordable country, and you know, the Italian lifestyle appeals to so many of us. So if you're looking to move to Italy for the job market, then perhaps look elsewhere. But if you're thinking of retiring or working remotely in Italy, then that might not be such a big deal for you. You might be more focused on your quality of life and things to do. Climate as well can be pretty good depending on where you're living in Italy. But as I suspected, it ranks very low when it comes to expat essentials. So this is things having to do with bureaucracy and red tape that I was mentioning. Last year, Italy ranked last out of 53 countries on administration, which has to do with getting visas and residency permits, and yeah, people encountering a lot of red tape there, especially when it comes to doing things like opening a bank account. Another thing that expats in Italy complain about is finding affordable housing. So you might have seen these news stories with headlines where you can buy a house in Italy for €1, but then you have to invest quite a bit more money fixing it up. So finding new housing can be a struggle, as well as finding good rental properties, because the market is very competitive and the demand really exceeds the supply of the types of properties that many expats are looking for. Connectivity is also a problem, as people report that it was really difficult to get high-speed internet installed at their houses. But if you can handle a little bit of red tape and some inconveniences, then you can be drinking red wine in Tuscany before you know it. We're sitting in a private vineyard in Tremonti, Italy, drinking wine and looking at this view. The next place on our list moved up slightly this year from the 52nd worst country to live in to the 48th. And this is a place that people describe as unfriendly and expensive. And this place is Norway. Now, this is actually one of my favorite countries in the world. I think it's a beautiful, safe, and peaceful country with a lot of things to do. Perfect if you are a hiker or you're into adventure sports and love nature. I mean, I don't know many other places in the world where you can hike fjords and drink glacier water from the ground. So that's what I love about Norway. I even made a whole video about living in Norway as an expat, but there are a couple things that people have some major problems with, and that is the cost of living and also the inability to fit in there and adjust, make friends, and really adapt to the culture. Now, the cost of living I can understand, because Norway is not the cheapest country in Europe. It's a country that's known for having high taxes, high sales tax, but you also do get a lot back for your money if you're going to be living and working there and paying taxes. As far as making friends, Norwegians aren't known as being the most friendly, outgoing people if you were to bump into them on the street, but that's because culturally they're definitely more modest and polite, maybe not as extroverted as people in other cultures, but once you get to know them, they can be very good, dependable, lifelong friends, and I love my Norwegian friends. Welcome to Oslo. On a helicopter pad.
The Oslo's biggest hospital.
On the plus side, expats rated Norway very highly when it comes to safety, security, political stability, and also the environment. And Norway actually ranked number 1 last year for job security. Number 5 on our list is another one of my personal favorites, and that is Canada. I've spent a lot of time over in Vancouver in the British Columbia corner of the country, as well as Montreal. It's a massive country, so you've got a lot of options for places to live, but it seems like people across Canada aren't so happy with it for a few reasons. There's a lot of things that they like. They like the environment, the nature, good public transportation options. They also find the locals to be really friendly, which we all know that Canadians are very nice and polite. And they say that they have high work satisfaction, great career opportunities there. So you might be thinking, what's the problem? Well, the problem is the cost of living and the housing situation. I don't know if you guys are seeing a pattern, but it seems like cost of living and housing are becoming huge problems in a lot of countries around the world, especially in recent years. So people say, despite saying that they love their jobs there, their income from their jobs is not enough to cover the increasing cost of living. So that is a problem. If we take a quick look on Nomad List to see the average cost of living for expats and nomads living in Canada, we can see that it starts from around $3,000 US per month to nearly $9,000 per month if you're living in a fancy place like Banff. Vancouver comes in at $5,500 per month for a nomad or $3,300 for an expat, and I would definitely say that sounds about right from my experience. I was pretty surprised at first to see Germany on this list as the 4th worst place for expats, because it's a country that I've really enjoyed spending time in, although I know a lot of Germans wouldn't agree with me as they leave the country for warmer, drier climates. But you know, it's not for everyone, and what expats said that they don't like about Germany from this survey is that it's not welcoming and it's not easy to make friends. They also said that it's hard to learn the language, and people complained a lot about the technology there. One expat said that there's a lack of a digital-first mindset. Germany is falling behind on the global stage, especially when it comes to things like Apple Pay, credit cards. There's a lot of places where only cash is accepted. On Nomad List, people say it's too expensive, too cold in the winter. They didn't like it there. It's difficult to make friends, and people smoke too much tobacco. But it's not all bad, however, as what people from this survey loved about Germany was the job security, the public transportation, safety, security, healthcare options, work-life balance, and quality of life. So if you can put up with a little bit of a language and cultural barrier there and maybe a rainy and cold climate in the winter, then Germany could be for you. But what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. The third worst place on this list, I personally didn't have the best impression of when I visited, but I did go there in the late fall, early winter. So it was basically cold, rainy, and gray, and that is Finland. So I went to Helsinki, but you've got a lot of country to explore, especially in the summers. You can go hiking, you can go out and explore islands. And then in the winter, you've got a lot of winter sports and skiing, and you also have some of the best places to view the northern lights. So it seems that expats really do appreciate the environment and also the climate in Finland. They like the nature there. I mean, this is a country that's covered with 75% forests, so you've got nature all around. Finland is also extremely safe, and in fact, 11 out of 12 stolen wallets are eventually returned to their owners, so that is incredible. Now, so far you might be thinking, all right, well, what's so bad about Finland and why is it at the bottom of this list? Well, there are a few key factors that people are not happy about. First of all is the job market. Apparently it's a very tight job market, very competitive, and also very little diversity in the availability of different jobs. Then you have the cost of living. Finland is an expensive country to live in. People say that their average cost is from $2,300 to nearly $4,000 US per month. Language is also a barrier as well. So even though a lot of people speak English there, if you don't speak the local language, then it is much harder to fit in. And people say that this also affects their job prospects as well. Healthcare, less than half of the people rated the medical care favorably, and also the cold climate. That's why it ends up down at the bottom of this list, despite being one of the happiest countries in the world. Now, the second to last place on this list is a country that many of you have asked me often in the comments, why don't I talk about it more? And that's because I'm always looking for the best places to live abroad, and this is a country that never really reaches to the top of any of those lists, and this is Turkey. So Turkey is a place that you might want to go to for a lot of different reasons, and there's definitely people that go to retire there, people that are interested in Turkey's golden visa and getting a second citizenship there. But overall, it ranks average to low in a lot of the categories that you would consider when you're deciding on a place to move abroad. Expats living in Turkey are 2 times more likely to be unhappy compared to living in other countries. It says that Turkey ranks last in the Working Abroad Index, and people don't think that moving there improved their career prospects at all. The overwhelming majority are also pretty dissatisfied with the economy and the political stability there, and they also find the local language and bureaucracy really challenging to manage. People also say that they don't feel comfortable expressing themselves fully in the society there, but what they do really like is the amazing Mediterranean climate and also the environment and things to do. The verdict is pretty split when it comes to friendliness of the locals and ease of settling into the culture there. But what I've drawn from these results is that Turkey might not be the best place to go find a job, but it can be quite a good place if you're going to retire or work remotely. I personally had a positive experience in Turkey. I know a lot of people in the comments will probably agree with me, but I poked around online, and the general consensus I can tell from expats who have been there long term is that they say to give it time. Don't judge a book by its cover. You might have some initial friction with fitting in with the culture, with learning the language, but they say that long term, the history, the culture, the amazing food, the climate, the low cost of living, there's a lot of benefits to living in Turkey that can really pay off if you just give it time. The worst country for expats, according to Expats, is located in the Middle East, and this is a country that I've never been to before, but I have met a lot of people who were living and working there, and they were pretty frank with me that the only reason that they were there was for their job. They were kind of in a form of golden handcuffs where they were getting compensated so highly to live there, whether they were working in government or they were teachers or working in private businesses, that they really couldn't leave even though they didn't love their lives there. I found this pretty sad, but it seems that the survey results here really confirm that. Kuwait was voted last out of 53 countries for 7 years in a row on this Expat Insider Index. And the biggest complaints from expats there are the quality of life, lack of affordable transportation, hot weather, and lack of natural environment. They also rate healthcare very low, in 51st place. And one Austrian expat said that in the summer, the heat can go above 50 degrees Celsius. Kuwait also ranks last when it comes to ease of settling in and ability to make friends. People say it's really difficult to form a social circle there and to have any kind of personal support. And they said that people aren't very friendly towards foreign residents, which I found pretty interesting. They do rate the economy very highly, but I don't know if that is enough to convince you to move there. But are there any countries on this list that you're planning to move to, regardless of what all of these other people say? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to know which countries were ranked the top 10 best places to live for expats by expats, then check out this video next.